So what is tensegrity, and why is it important to our understanding of our body, and particularly the energetic system of our body? So tensegrity was a term that was coined by a guy called Buckminster Fuller in the 1960s. He was a very interesting guy, had his lots of ideas about lots of different things, and he was really referring to a structural or mechanical system that balances the forces of compression and tension. So for most of that time, since the 1960s, it's been referring to structural or architectural designs and objects. But in more recent years, people have been using the concept of tensegrity applied to the human body, applied to a biological system, and then people start calling it biotensegrity. So what is biotensegrity? In the old view of a human body, the view that's kind of been prevailing for maybe a century or so, the body is seen as being a set of building blocks, one on top of the other, which exist under a kind of compression forces and build up like this. So for example, the spine, you know, one vertebra on top of the other, taking the compression forces from above. But I think that view is really starting to get very out of date, and people are starting to look at new ways to understand the body. And this is where biotensegrity has been very helpful in understanding aspects of our physical system and how we hold our shape. So the idea is that the bones are not compression like blocks one on top of the other. They're actually, the bones are floating within a sea of soft tissue, and the bones actually are not touching each other. The bones touch soft tissue. So in order to be able to understand this in a bit more, I've got a model. So this is a model of a tensegrity, well, this is a tensegrity structure, a model that's very helpful. So here, the compression struts, these pieces of dowel, are representing the bones, and then we have these tension wires here, which are representing the soft tissue. So none of the bones are touching, they're actually embedded within a balance of forces of tension and compression which hold the structure in its shape. And it's a very flexible shape, it can move in every direction, but it kind of rebounds back to the same original shape if I flex it and it comes back to what it was originally, which is a very helpful way of seeing how the body is made up. So the compression struts, the bones, they might be in contact with, I don't know, a piece of cartilage, or might be linked through ligaments or tendons. The joint capsule contains a lot of cartilage and fascia and things like that. So that's really the tension components here, which are holding the whole structure together. Now, if I add movement in any direction, then you see that the forces are transmitted around the entire structure. So if I pull it apart, it's not just these two parts that are moving apart, then these bits get, you know, under different forces of tension, it's transmitted around the whole structure. Same thing if I push one part of it together, then actually the whole structure shares that, if you like, called stress, if you like, of the pressing in that I'm doing from one side. So it's shared out across the whole system. And that's sort of the view that we can take of our body. If our body experiences a compression or tension or shear forces or some kind of stress in one direction, it's not just that one part that is feeling it, on my arm or fingers or something. Actually, those forces are transmitted across the whole of my body. My whole body feels the effect of a stress that's put on in one particular point. It's shared out. Okay, so the intensity might be in one part, but it's shared out across the whole system because the whole system is actually under a balance together. So it's very important. Now, in terms of thinking about our breath, then this is a very nice sort of tensegrity structure here of the ribs and the belly and the lower back. And as I breathe in, the body increases in its volume and takes breath in, and as I breathe out, then it squeezes and the air comes out. So here this is a breath in, and I'm coming bigger than my original structure, and then I come back to neutral. And then as I breathe out, my body becomes smaller, the breath goes out, and then it comes back to neutral. So in and out, and then a neutral, right? There's a kind of balance, middle point there. And we can try it for ourselves. Like I can breathe out, and then I relax, and the breath just comes in by itself. And then I can breathe all the way in, and then I can relax, and the breath just goes out by itself. And we've come to this middle neutral position where we don't have to hold the body in any particular way. We're just in the middle. We can breathe out from there, or we can breathe in from there, but we come back to a neutral. So this is like our tensegrity structure, moving and then coming back to a neutral, moving, coming back to neutral. So this is the way our chest and our abdomen functions in order to hold its structure, basically. It doesn't just collapse to nothing when we breathe out. It sort of comes back to a middle neutral position. So let's think about the energetic system of the body, the lines of the energy channels or the meridians. Energy can take lots of different forms in the body. There can be a chemical energy, there can be potential energy, kinetic energy, there can be heat energy. There can also be a mechanical stress energy. So that would be tension and compression. So we're adding energy to the system. This is quite hard for me to push in and then I release. And again, in the other direction, this is adding energy to the system and then it's released back to the center. So the lines of mechanical stress in this tensegrity structure are the tension wires here, these elastic bands. So the compression struts, they're just getting compressed, they don't move, but as I add energy to the system, then these tension wires are taking the strain and then releasing it, right, like elastic bands. And it's exactly the same here with our system of soft tissues. When I add something like compression, then the soft tissues find that and then they release, right? Same thing goes this way. I add a stretch and then release, yeah. It's all happening right. The foot is just like that, the palm of the hand, you know, all those kind of structures. They take in the energy and then they release it again. That's how we move around. So these lines of mechanical energy, like the tension, are very equivalent to the meridian lines. So there's been a whole book about this called Anatomy Trains. This very brilliant guy called Tom Myers has been dissecting the body for years and years and come up with particular lines of the body which seem to take most of the mechanical tension and stress in as we add and take away that energy from the body. He calls them anatomy trains because they're continuous lines of soft tissue. So for example, there's one coming up the inside line of the arm, there's one coming down the front surface of the body, up the back surface of the body, those kind of things, and they're very equivalent. Okay, they're not the same, but they're very equivalent to the meridian lines. So the meridian lines are like energy channels. They're lines of connection in the body which are transmitting energy. So this energy, as I say, could be lots of different forms, but if we're thinking purely on the mechanical energy side of things, then we've got these transmission of the lines of mechanical stress, so the kind of stretch and the compression. And that is very equivalent, you know, to these lines of tension in the tensegrity structure. So in order to understand the transmission of mechanical energy in the body, then we're following lines of these tension wires. And those tension wires seem to correspond quite closely to what we would see as being the energy channels or meridians in the body, down the side of the body, up the inside of the leg, those kinds of things. What we call the lines of like the lungs or the bladder or the kidney energy lines, they're actually just partly they're transmitting mechanical energetics through the body. In order to understand the body, we really need to understand tensegrity structures, how the muscles, how the bones work in balance with each other to maintain a structure. Very important for our understanding of the body, understanding of the energetic system in our yoga work.